The Ethereal Conclave had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years. They were beings of pure energy, ancient beyond measure, worshipped as living gods by countless species across 1,000,000 worlds. Their very presence could reshape matter, bend reality, command the fundamental forces of the universe with a thought. To them, humanity was nothing more than a curious anomaly. Flesh and bone creatures crawling on a single mud ball at the galaxy's edge, barely capable of crude faster-than-light travel. When the humans first made contact with galactic civilization, the Ethereals barely acknowledged their existence. After all, what threat could mortals pose to gods? Dr. Marcus Chen was the first human to witness an Ethereal's true power. He stood in the Grand Cathedral of Vex High Prime, watching in awe as Ethereal Prime Zalthos addressed the assembled representatives of 47 species. The being floated 3 meters above the crystalline floor, its form a shifting mass of golden light that hurt to look at directly. The harvest worlds of Sector 7 will be repurposed, Zalthos declared, its voice resonating not through sound but directly into the minds of everyone present. The inhabitants will be relocated to more suitable accommodations. Dr. Chen raised his hand hesitantly. Excuse me, but where exactly will 3 billion beings be relocated to? The cathedral fell silent. 47 species held their breath as Zalthos turned its attention to the small human in the simple blue suit. The Ethereal's form pulsed brighter, and Chen felt his knees buckle under the weight of divine attention. The mortal speaks without permission, Zalthos observed, its mental voice carrying amusement. How quaint. The displaced beings will find new purpose in our great work, human. Their atomic structure will be recycled to fuel our expansion into the next dimensional layer. Chen's blood ran cold. You're going to kill 3 billion people and use their bodies as raw materials. Kill. The Ethereal's form flickered with what might have been laughter. Mortals do not comprehend the concept of death as we do. We are simply reorganizing their constituent elements for a higher purpose. They should be honored to contribute to divinity's grand design. Around the cathedral, representatives of various species nodded in acceptance. Some even prostrated themselves in gratitude. This was how it had always been. The Ethereals commanded, and mortals obeyed, grateful for the attention of their gods. But Dr. Chen didn't bow. He didn't nod. He stood there, small and defiant, his jaw clenched with barely contained rage. That's genocide, he said quietly. The word echoed through the cathedral like a gunshot. Species that had never heard the term felt its weight, its accusation, its challenge to the natural order. But Zalthos only pulsed brighter, its amusement growing. Your species amuses us, human. You speak of concepts that have no meaning to beings of our stature. We are beyond your mortal concepts of right and wrong. We simply are. Chen looked around at the other representatives, seeing fear, submission, acceptance in their eyes. Then he looked back at the floating god thing and spoke words that would echo across the galaxy for centuries. We'll see about that. 6 months later, the ethereal known as Velkareth was hunting in the Crimson Nebula, feeding on the stellar matter of a dying star, when the trap was sprung. It started as a minor curiosity. Strange readings on the nebula's edge, energy signatures that didn't match any known phenomena. Velkareth, ancient and powerful, investigated personally. After all, what in this universe could threaten a being that had witnessed the birth of galaxies? The attack came from 12 directions simultaneously. Not energy weapons or conventional missiles, but something far more insidious. Devices that didn't destroy matter but rather, isolated it. Quantum isolation chambers that could separate even an energy being from the universal field that sustained it. Velkareth found itself suddenly contained, trapped within a prison of folded spacetime that blocked its connection to the cosmic forces it had wielded for millennia. For the first time in its eternal existence, the ethereal felt something like panic. Then the humans appeared. They came in ships unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Sleek vessels that seemed to phase in and out of reality, constructed from materials that shouldn't exist, powered by energies that violated known physics. The lead ship was small by galactic standards, barely 200 meters long, but it radiated a presence that made Velcareth recoil. A transmission pierced the quantum isolation field. The voice was human, female, speaking in perfect ethereal resonance frequencies. "Hello, Velcareth. My name is Admiral Elena Vasquez of the Human Godhunter Fleet. We need to talk." The ethereal struggled against its prison, reality bending around it as it fought to break free. But the isolation field held, constructed from principles that turned the ethereal's own power against itself. What are you?" Velcareth's mental voice carried a note of something it had never experienced before. "Fear. We're humans," Vasquez replied calmly. "You know, those weak mortals you've been casually genociding for the past 12,000 years. The ones you thought were beneath your notice." The human ships began to move in a complex pattern around the trapped ethereal, their formations precise and purposeful. Velcareth could sense massive energies building within their hulls, technologies that seemed to mock the laws of physics. "Impossible," the ethereal whispered. "You are flesh. You are mortal. You cannot comprehend forces beyond your understanding." Admiral Vasquez's laugh was transmitted directly into Velcareth's consciousness, and it was not a pleasant sound. "That's where you made your first mistake. You assumed that because we're mortal, we're weak. You assumed that because we're flesh, we're limited. But you never bothered to learn what mortality actually means." The energy readings from the human ship spiked beyond anything in Velcareth's experience. "Mortality means we die, yes. But it also means we adapt. It means we evolve. It means we face impossible odds and find ways to win anyway, because we have no choice. And most importantly, the lead ship's weapon systems came online, energies that made stars look like candles. It means we have absolutely nothing to lose. The weapon that killed Velcareth wasn't energy or matter. It was something far more fundamental. The humans had learned to weaponize entropy itself, to accelerate the heat death of the universe in localized areas. They had turned the ethereal's own immortality against it, forcing billions of years of decay into a single moment. Velcareth screamed as its ancient consciousness unraveled, eons of memory and power dissolving into quantum foam. Its last thought was a desperate warning broadcast to its fellow ethereals across the galaxy. "The humans, they've learned to kill gods." The warning reached the Ethereal Conclave just as they were preparing to harvest Sector 7. 12 ethereals, beings of unimaginable power, floated in the void between galaxies where they held court. They had felt Velcareth's death, the impossible termination of an immortal consciousness, and for the first time in their eternal existence, they knew uncertainty. Xalthos, the prime among them, pulsed with barely contained rage. "This cannot be. Mortals cannot threaten the eternal. We are beyond death, beyond ending." "And yet Velcareth is gone," observed Kethmar, the ethereal of deep memory. "Not dormant, not transformed, but truly ended. The humans have achieved something that should be impossible. Then we shall demonstrate why gods are to be feared," declared Yoxheim, the ethereal of war. "Gather the fleet. We will burn their worlds to ash and scatter their atoms across the void." But as the ethereals began to marshal their forces, preparing for the first war they had fought in 10,000 years, they discovered something that chilled their ancient souls. The humans were already hunting. Across the galaxy, ethereals began to disappear. Not in dramatic battles or cosmic confrontations, but quietly, efficiently, one by one. Each death was different, each trap uniquely crafted to exploit specific vulnerabilities the ethereals never knew they possessed. The ethereal of time found itself locked in a temporal loop, experiencing its own destruction repeatedly until its consciousness shattered from the paradox. The ethereal of space was compressed into a singularity so dense it collapsed into another dimension entirely. The ethereal of mind was subjected to a psychic virus that turned its own thoughts against it, creating recursive feedback loops that burned out its neural pathways. Each death was broadcast across human communication networks, not as boasts or threats, but as scientific data. The humans were studying their prey, learning from each kill, refining their techniques with the methodical precision of apex predators. Dar. Sarah Kim, the lead researcher on Project Deicide, stood before a holographic display showing the locations of confirmed ethereal deaths. Red marks dotted the galactic map like droplets of blood, each one representing a god brought low by mortal hands. 17 confirmed kills in the past 3 months, she reported to Admiral Vasquez. The Ethereals are adapting their tactics, avoiding areas where we've struck before, but they're also showing signs of genuine panic. Vasquez nodded grimly. Good. Fear makes them careless. What about the big prize? Kim's expression darkened. Xalthos is still hiding in the deep void with the remaining Conclave members. Our scouts can't get close enough for a proper scan, and their combined power makes a direct assault inadvisable. Then we don't assault them directly. Vasquez turned to address the assembled team of scientists, military officers, and what the rest of the galaxy would have called impossibilities. We've been hunting individual Ethereals for months, learning their weaknesses, understanding their nature. Now it's time for the final lesson. She activated a new display, showing a massive construct hidden in the asteroid belt of an unnamed system. It was enormous, easily the size of a small moon, its surface covered in technologies that hurt to look at directly. Project Ragnarok, Vasquez announced. If the Ethereals want to hide in the deep void, we'll give them exactly what they deserve. We're going to collapse their entire pocket dimension and drag them kicking and screaming back into reality. The construct had taken 2 years to build, using technologies reverse-engineered from dead Ethereals and principles that violated everything known about physics. It was part weapon, part dimensional anchor, part reality engine. And it was humanity's answer to 12,000 years of divine tyranny. The beauty of it, Dr. Kim explained as the team reviewed the final preparations, is that they can't defend against it. The Ethereal's power comes from their connection to higher dimensional layers. Cut that connection, and they're just very ancient energy beings trapped in normal spacetime. And then, asked Commander Torres, the military liaison. Vasquez smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. And then we show them what mortals do to false gods. The activation of Project Ragnarok sent shockwaves across 17 dimensions. In the deep void, the Ethereal Conclave felt reality itself twist and buckle around them as their sanctuary began to collapse. Ancient beings that had existed since the universe was young suddenly found themselves being dragged back into the material plane, their immortal forms becoming increasingly solid, increasingly vulnerable. Xalthos screamed as its perfect energy form began to crystallize, divine light becoming crude matter. Around it, the remaining 7 Ethereals suffered similar fates, their godlike powers fading as they were forcibly anchored to baseline reality. What have you done to us? Xalthos broadcast its anguish across every frequency, its mental voice now carrying physical pain for the first time in its existence. The answer came from Admiral Vasquez herself, her voice transmitted directly into the collapsing pocket dimension. We've done what mortals do best, she said calmly. We've leveled the playing field. The human fleet that emerged from hyperspace around the collapsed void was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Hundreds of ships, each one incorporating technologies that should have been impossible, crewed by beings who had learned to kill the unkillable. But they didn't attack immediately. Instead, they waited, letting the trapped Ethereals feel true vulnerability for the first time in their eternal existence. 12,000 years, Vasquez continued, her voice carrying across the void. 12,000 years of casual genocide. Trillions of lives snuffed out because you decided their atoms would be useful elsewhere. Entire civilizations erased because you found their existence inconvenient. The Ethereals struggled against their crystalline prisons, reality-warping powers that had once reshaped galaxies now barely able to crack the dimensional anchors holding them. We are eternal. Xalthos raged. We are beyond your comprehension. You cannot simply decide to end gods. Vasquez's laugh echoed through the void, cold and final. Watch us. The weapons that ended the Ethereal Conclave were not the exotic entropy cannons or dimensional disruptors humanity had used on individual targets. Instead, they were simple, crude, almost primitive by the standards of the technology surrounding them. Kinetic impactors. Chunks of dense metal accelerated to significant fractions of light speed. The most basic weapon in humanity's arsenal, turned against beings that had considered themselves beyond physical harm. But that was the point. The Ethereals had spent eternity viewing themselves as above the material universe, too perfect and refined to be touched by crude matter. They had forgotten that sometimes, the simplest solutions were the most effective. The first impactor struck Zalthos directly, its crystallized form shattering like glass. The ancient being's scream cut across every dimension as its consciousness dispersed into component energy patterns, then faded entirely. One by one, the remaining Ethereals died. Not in cosmic conflagrations or reality-bending battles, but crushed by simple chunks of metal traveling very, very fast. It was undignified, crude, mortal. It was perfect. When the last Ethereal fell silent, Admiral Vasquez opened a communication channel to the entire galaxy. Her message was simple, broadcast in every language spoken by every species under what had once been divine rule. The Ethereal Conclave is dead. The gods you worshipped, the beings you feared, the entities that treated your lives as raw materials for their cosmic projects, they're gone. Killed by mortals who got tired of being treated as expendable. The silence that followed was absolute. Across 1,000,000 worlds, species that had bowed before divine power for 12 millennia tried to comprehend a universe without gods. Some of you will mourn them, Vasquez continued. Some of you will refuse to believe they're truly gone. But those of you with any sense will take this opportunity to learn the most important lesson in galactic history. She paused, letting her words sink in across the vast distances of space. Never underestimate what mortals will do when you push them too far. We die, yes. But before we die, we make sure our enemies die first. And if those enemies happen to be gods. The transmission ended, but the message was clear. Humanity had announced itself not as another species seeking a place in the galactic community, but as the apex predator that had just cleared the top of the food chain. In the years that followed, the galaxy entered what historians would call the Age of Mortality. Without the Ethereal's casual intervention, species were free to develop along their own paths, to make their own mistakes, to rise and fall by their own choices. Some thrived. Others collapsed. A few tried to fill the power vacuum left by the dead gods, proclaiming themselves the new divine rulers of creation. They learned quickly why that was a mistake. Dr. Marcus Chen, now wearing the insignia of Earth's ambassador to galactic affairs, stood before the rebuilt Galactic Council. The chamber was different now, smaller, more humble. No species claimed divine authority. No beings floated above the assembly proclaiming their superiority to mere mortals. The human delegation recognizes that some species are uncomfortable with our recent actions, Chen said diplomatically. We understand that killing the beings you worshipped for 12,000 years might seem extreme. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The Veltar representative, an insectoid creature with compound eyes, clicked nervously. The Ethereals were gods, it said. They shaped reality itself. How can mortals presume to judge divine beings? Chen's smile was pleasant, polite, and absolutely terrifying. Very easily, actually. You see, we humans have a saying, the only good god is a dead god. We've never been particularly impressed by claims of divinity. In our experience, anyone who claims to be above moral judgment usually proves they're beneath it. He gestured to a holographic display showing the reconstruction efforts on worlds the Ethereals had strip-mined for resources. The beings you called gods treated sentient life as raw materials. They casually committed genocide whenever it was convenient. They ruled through fear and claimed it was divine right. His smile never wavered. So we killed them. All of them. And we'll kill any other gods who decide to follow in their footsteps. The chamber fell silent. Every delegate understood the implicit threat, the promise hidden behind diplomatic language. But surely, ventured the Aquarian representative, humanity doesn't intend to rule in their place. Surely you don't seek to become the new gods. Chen laughed, the sound echoing through the chamber. Gods? Us? Oh no, we have absolutely no interest in divinity. Gods are static, perfect, unchanging. We're mortals. We grow, we adapt, we improve. We make mistakes and learn from them. We die and make room for the next generation to do better. He stood, straightening his simple diplomatic jacket. We don't want to rule the galaxy. We just want to make sure that nobody else rules it either. No more gods, no more divine hierarchies, no more species claiming cosmic authority over others. Just mortals, figuring things out as we go. The session ended shortly after, delegates hurrying away to report to their home governments, to process the new reality of galactic politics. Humanity had killed the gods and declared themselves the guardians of mortality. Some called them liberators. Others called them terrorists. But everyone called them when they needed something impossible done. Because the galaxy had learned a fundamental truth, mortals who could kill gods were mortals you wanted on your side. And humanity, having tasted divine blood, had developed quite an appetite for the impossible. In the hidden archives of Earth's military intelligence, Admiral Vasquez reviewed reports from across the galaxy. New threats were always emerging, new species claiming superiority, new beings proclaiming their right to rule over others. Each report ended with the same recommendation: recommend immediate Godhunter deployment. Vasquez approved every single one. After all, someone had to keep the universe honest. Someone had to make sure that when mortals looked up at the stars, they didn't see God staring back down at them. And if that someone happened to be a species crazy enough to declare war on divinity itself, well, the galaxy was learning to live with that. One dead god at a time.